They said lion doesn't know that he's caged until he's let out. I got a taste of freedom. Now I just can't go back into the cage.
There was only one name that mattered: Bumpy Johnson.
February 18th, 1958. 2 in the morning. A lone telephone screamed through the silence of Bumpy Johnson's Harlem kingdom. Lesser men wouldn't have dared to answer. The devil doesn't call this late to offer blessings. Yet Bumpy answered on the second ring. The words on the other end made his jaw lock tight, a subtle shift, that to those who knew the godfather of Harlem was a death warrant signed in blood. Bumpy? The voice was a ghost of itself, drowning in tears. It was Billie, Lady Day, the Queen of Jazz herself, calling the Emperor of Harlem in the dead of night, shattered. What happened? Bumpy's voice was ice, calm, controlled, dangerous, yet his hand was already seizing his coat. John. He took it all. The entire Apollo payout. 3,000 large. He claimed I owed him. He said, her voice shattered like glass. He laid his hands on me. Bumpy, I can't take another breath of this. John Levy, her manager, the man sworn by blood and contract to be her shield, had been draining her life force for 2 years. Tonight, he crossed a line that even the underworld's code of silence demanded blood for. By the time the sun bled into the sky, John Levy would be resident at Lenox Hill with 2 cracked ribs, a jaw turned to dust, and a police report he wouldn't dare whisper into existence. Before you tap that like button, because this tale demands your respect, understand this. What transpired in the 6 hours between that desperate call and the morning light wasn't mere vengeance. It was a lesson on what happens when you mistake Harlem's guardian for a man who abandons his family. To grasp the weight of that night, you must know what Billie Holiday meant to Harlem in 1958, and more lethally, what she meant to Bumpy Johnson. Billie wasn't just a singer. By the late 50s, she was an empress. Her voice possessed the power to bring hardened killers to their knees, could pack the Apollo for 3 nights of worship, turning a simple ballad into a sermon of pure, unadulterated heartbreak. Strange fruit, God bless the child, lover man. These weren't merely songs. They were the very soul of Harlem, crystallized into melody. But here is the secret the history books buried. Billie Holiday was destitute, not pinching pennies, not struggling. She was flat broke. Despite every venue she graced turning to gold, despite record-shattering charts, despite owning one of the most legendary voices in America, Billie couldn't scrape together rent. The reason? One name: John Levy. A bass player turned manager who had coiled around her career like a suffocating python in '56. A silver tongue, a tailor-made suit, connected to the core. He vowed to handle the business, to shield her from the industry's circling vultures, to secure her rightful tribute. Instead, he evolved into the deadliest predator of them all. The contract Levy forced on her surrendered 50% of everything she bled for. Not the standard 15, not even a greedy 25, 50%. Half of every soul-crushing note Billie sang flowed directly into John Levy's greed, but the theft was merely the opening act. Levy played God. He dictated the stage, the time, the company. He tapped her lines, isolating her from any allies who might smell the rot. And whenever Billie showed a spark of resistance, whenever she demanded to see the ledger, Levy dealt the same card. You owe me. Advances, expenses, fees. You're drowning in debt. A bold-faced lie. Billie Holiday wasn't in the red. She was being plundered. Bumpy Johnson had known the girl since she was 19, hustling in the dive bars of Lenox Avenue for pocket change and gin. He witnessed her ascension, watched her voice ripen into a divine force, and when she signed her soul to Levy, Bumpy had issued a warning. That man carries the eyes of a viper, Bumpy had stated. You want me to vet him? But Billie had dismissed the Godfather's concern. She believed she held the reins. She thought surrendering the business would liberate her art. By the time the truth hit her, Levy's fangs were buried too deep to remove without bleeding out. Bumpy watched from the darkness, waiting, because that is the way of the king. He observes, he waits, and when destiny aligns, he strikes. The music industry of '58 was a hunting ground for monsters. Black talent, no matter how legendary, was treated like livestock. Labels swallowed royalties, managers siphoned fortunes, and club owners tossed scraps from the table. No one lifted a finger because the artists had no muscle, no leverage, no shield, except in Harlem. In Harlem, they answered to Bumpy Johnson. John Levy believed himself a god, untouchable. He'd controlled Billie for 2 years, and in that span, he had pilfered an estimated $200,000 from her empire. He severed her bonds, hijacked her vault, and kept her shackled to him using a lethal mix of mind games and cocaine which he supplied, then billed her for. January 1958. Billie took the stage for a 7-day war at the Apollo. 7 nights, sold out. 1,500 souls per show. The pot was 25 grand. Billie's share, after Levy slashed his 50 in expenses, 900. Billie smelled the rot. She'd survived the industry long enough to know this math was fiction. But when she stepped up to Levy, he had his weapon drawn. "You think this is playtime?" Levy's voice dropped, cold and laced with venom. "You think you can just walk out that door? Read the ink, Billie. I own you for 3 more years. You try to run, I'll sue you into the dirt. You'll be finished, singing in gutters for drunk grunts. That was the game. Keep her terrified. Keep her alone. Keep her hopeless." But on February 17th, 1958, the wind changed direction. Billie had just closed the set at Small's Paradise. 2 shows, standing room only. Her voice was absolute perfection, hitting notes that made the crowd forget they were in a jazz joint, and not in the presence of the divine. The owner, Wilt Chamberlain's partner, handed Levy $3,000 in cash. Business as usual. Billie was backstage when Levy strolled in, thumbing through the stack. "What's my take?" Billie asked. Levy didn't even grant her a glance. "You get nothing. You owe me for the suite, the wheels, the overhead." "What overhead?" "I took the damn subway. I'm crashing on a couch." Levy's face turned to stone. "Don't test me, Billie. You know the drill. I want my cash, John." That's when Levy signed his death warrant. He snatched her arm hard enough to bruise, hard enough to inflict pain. "You'll take what I feed you. Now shut your trap and thank God I'm still managing a washed-up junkie like you." Billie recoiled, but Levy's grip crushed down for a split second. They stood frozen in that space, and Billie gazed into an abyss within his eyes that chilled her very soul. The man she had entrusted with her fame, her fortune, and her very existence held the capacity for true, brutal violence. Levy released his grip, shoved the cash into his pocket, and strode toward the exit without a backward glance. "Be prepared for the Boston gig on Thursday. And listen closely, Billie. If you breathe a word of this to a living soul, I will ensure your voice is silenced forever." Billie remained motionless until the echo of his footsteps died away in the corridor. Then she moved toward the payphone on the corner of 135th Street, and finally dialed the number she had been evading for 2 long years. But what John Levy remained ignorant of, what he could never have fathomed, was that Bumpy Johnson had been compiling a dossier on him for 18 months. You see, when Bumpy had cautioned Billie about Levy back in 1956 and she refused his protection, Bumpy did not simply abandon her. He merely altered his strategy. Rather than stepping in with force, he began observing, listening, and amassing irrefutable proof. Bumpy had eyes planted in every corner of the city. The girl at the coat check in Small's Paradise, she was on Bumpy's payroll. The bartender pouring drinks at the Apollo was Bumpy's own blood. Even the booking agent arranging Billie's performances carried a debt to Bumpy from 1952. Every single time Levy collected Billie's earnings, a shadow was watching. Every single time he pocketed cash that belonged to her, A silent observer was keeping count. Every single time he threatened her safety, someone was listening in. Bumpy kept a ledger in his private office, recording every illicit transaction with absolute precision. Dates, figures, locations, witnesses. He held sworn statements from club owners detailing the actual payments versus the lies Levy reported. He possessed hotel receipts confirming that Levy's expenses were nothing but fabrication. He possessed the ammunition to dismantle John Levy's career and strip away his freedom. But Bumpy was holding back for a specific trigger. He was waiting for Levy to cross the fatal line from simple theft to physical violence. Because theft was a sin the music industry could overlook. But violence against Harlem's queen, Lady Day, that was an unforgivable transgression. When Billie called at 2 in the morning, weeping about Levy laying hands on her, Bumpy knew the hour of judgment had arrived. He placed 3 decisive phone calls. The first went to Illinois Gordon, his right-hand man and most loyal soldier. Bring the vehicle around. We are heading to the Woodside Hotel. That was the location where Levy was currently residing. Bumpy knew this because he had shadowed Levy's movements for the past 6 months. The second call was directed to Clarence Moore, a physician operating out of Sugar Hill who was indebted to Bumpy for keeping his son out of prison. I require you on standby. A man is going to need urgent medical care in approximately 4 hours. The third call was to Billie herself. Give me your exact location. I am at Sarah's place. Sarah Vaughan, a fellow jazz legend, was one of the few allies Levy had failed to sever from Billie's life. You remain there. Do not touch the phone. Do not unlock the door for a soul other than me. This nightmare ends tonight. At 3 in the morning, Bumpy Johnson and Illinois Gordon descended upon the Woodside Hotel on 142nd Street. The night clerk, a kid named Marcus, glanced up from his reading and instantly, drained of all color. Mr. Johnson? Marcus stammered out. How may I help? John Levy. Which room? I am not authorized to. Bumpy slid a $50 bill across the surface. What room? 412. The entrance to room 412 was unsecured. Levy had been indulging in spirits. A bottle of scotch rested half-consumed on the nightstand, and his guard was completely down. When Bumpy and Illinois stepped into the space, Levy was busy counting his spoils. The 3,000 from Small's Paradise was fanned out on the bed as if he were playing a child's board game. Levy raised his head and locked eyes with Bumpy Johnson, framing the doorway. And for the first time in 2 years, a sensation struck him that he had not known since boyhood. Absolute, primal terror. Bumpy, Levy voiced, attempting a tone of nonchalance, but failing miserably. What brings you here? Bumpy shut the door firmly behind him. He did not rush. He did not raise his volume. He simply advanced slowly into the room. His gaze locked onto Levy's face like a vice. You laid your hands on Billie Holiday this evening. Levy's jaw clenched in defiance. That matter is between my client and myself. This is strictly business, Bumpy. You have no authority here. $3,000, Bumpy cut in, signaling to the cash on the bed. From Small's Paradise. That is Billie's money. My money. Read the contract. I get. You get nothing. Bumpy's voice was a whisper, yet it possessed a gravity that seemed to crush the air out of the room. You have been embezzling from Billie Holiday for 2 years. I know the amount. I know the time. I know the place. I possess documentation of every dollar, every deception, every threat. Levy rose to his feet, attempting to expand his chest, striving to appear more formidable than reality. You cannot prove a thing. And even if you could, who cares? She is a junkie, Bumpy, a washed up. He never saw Illinois move. 1 second, Illinois was stationed by the door. In the next breath, he had Levy by the throat, driving him into the wall with enough force to fracture the plaster. Release him, Bumpy commanded with ice-cold calm. Illinois dropped Levy, who collapsed to the floor, fighting for oxygen. Bumpy dragged a chair closer and took a seat, observing Levy, like a scientist, studying a particularly pathetic insect. Here is how this plays out. You are going to hand over that $3,000. You are going to provide me with another $50,000 to restitute what you have stolen from Billy over the last 2 years. I do not possess $50,000. Then you had best locate it, liquidate your vehicle, beg from your associates. I do not care. You have 48 hours. And if I refuse? Bumpy leaned in close. Then I hand this ledger. He produced a small black notebook from his jacket. To the IRS. Every dollar you failed to report, every fraudulent expense claim, every shred of evidence they require to lock you in federal prison for tax evasion. That carries a 10-year sentence, minimum. The color drained from Levy's face. Bumpy opened the book and began to recite. January 12th, 1957, Apollo Theater. Gross $8,400. You reported $4,000. January 19th. Blue Note. Gross $2,000. You reported $200. Shall I proceed? Because I possess 18 months of this data. Silence claimed the room, broken only by Levy's ragged gasps. But understand this, John, Bumpy continued, his tone dropping to a subterranean level. The money is merely business. What you did this evening, laying your hands on Billy, that is personal. And in Harlem, when you disrespect one of our own, a price must be paid. Bumpy gave a sharp nod to Illinois. The violence that followed was blindingly fast. Illinois hoisted Levy up, pinning him against the wall, and Bumpy rose slowly from his chair. He stared into Levy's soul for a long moment, then uttered 5 words that would haunt Levy for the remainder of his days. You do not touch Lady Day. Then Bumpy struck him, not with wild rage, but with cold calculation. 2 blows to the ribs, precise enough to fracture the bone, yet controlled enough to spare the lung. Then 1 final strike to the jaw, hard enough to dislocate the joint. Levy crumbled to the floor, blood spilling from his mouth, choking on his own agony. Bumpy retrieved the $3,000 from the bed, creased it neatly, and slipped it into his pocket. Then he gazed down at Levy one final time. Dr. Moore is waiting downstairs. He will ensure you survive. But when you are discharged from that hospital, you are going to sign a document. Cut Billie Holiday loose from the paper. No debts, no hidden costs. Absolutely 0. Then you pack your bags, leave this city, and don't ever look back. If word gets back, you're handling another talent. If you step foot in Harlem, or if your name even crosses my desk again, Bumpy let the silence hang. Next time, I let Illinois put you in the ground. By 6:15 in the morning, with the sun breaking over the streets, John Levy was checking into Lenox Hill. Doc Moore patched him up, rang the meat wagon, and fed the cops a story about a mugging, while Levy lay there shaking and broken. The Whisper network lit up across the business. In days, everyone knew Levy was taken care of. The specifics changed depending on which mouth was moving. But the lesson was crystal clear. Bumpy Johnson had sent a suit to the emergency room for robbing and hurting Billie Holiday. Managers running the same hustle on our artists suddenly walked on eggshells. Club bosses skimming off the top started handing over full envelopes. Those blood-sucking deals that were business as usual began to vanish. By March 1st, 1958, Levy put ink on the release papers and skipped town for Los Angeles. He never ran a big act again, tried to set up shop out west, but the word traveled faster than he did. No one touched the guy who crossed Bumpy Johnson. 3 weeks later, Billie Holiday took the stage at the Apollo Theater. Packed house, everyone on their feet. And for the first time in 2 years, she pocketed every dime she made. After the curtain fell, she hit Small's Paradise, finding Bumpy at his regular spot. "Thank you," she said, keeping it real. Bumpy just gave a nod. In Harlem, we look out for our own. Billie fought her own wars for the rest of her days. The junk, the bad men, and the hate that rotted the music business from the inside out. She checked out a year later in 1959, way too soon. But for that last stretch, she was out from under Levy's thumb, singing with a force that reminded every soul why she held the title of Lady Day. The tale of that night became street scripture in Harlem, spun in clubs and chairs for decades. It wasn't just about payback or breaking bones. It was about something heavier, knowing that in a game rigged to chew up and spit out black talent, there were men ready to stand tall and say, "Not on my turf, not in Harlem." Bumpy proved a point that night most folks overlook. Real power ain't just about who you can crush. It's about who you keep safe. It's about drawing a line in the sand and making it known that stepping over it brings pain. Look, if this business touched a nerve, if it made you see, the real measure of the man Bumpy Johnson was, smash that like button now. And if you ain't part of the crew yet, what's the holdup? We're dishing out the street history of Harlem's Godfather daily, and trust me, the next one hits harder. Leave a word below. Should Bumpy have finished it, would you have dealt with Levy another way? And hey, keep your ears open, because next week we're laying out how Bumpy Johnson strolled into Costello's office with just a case and walked out holding the keys to half the numbers game in Manhattan. You don't want to sleep on that. Remember, uptown, respect wasn't a gift, it was a paycheck, and Bumpy collected his, by shielding the ones who couldn't fight back, Lady Day included.